Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I thought I would chat with you guys a little bit about one of the problems we do have in the strength training world, and that's the idea of an over-obsession with specificity. And when I say that, I don't mean that we shouldn't care about specificity. What I think is that we lose sight of the fact that strength is strength, and anything that makes you generally stronger will have carryover. It will have carryover. Now, what that doesn't mean, however, is that you can always use an oddball lift to determine the strength on another lift. Because that's a caveat I want to throw in there, because that's something that does come up when people are doing some of these other lifts. Like some guys will do a high handle trap bar, and then people assume that they're only 50 pounds stronger on that than they are on a conventional deadlift or a sumo deadlift. And the odds are they probably aren't. They probably aren't. There could be hundreds of pounds difference. But it will still improve their deadlift. And that's what people need to remember. In other words, if you take your high handle trap bar deadlift and you go from being able to do 500 pounds on it to 800 pounds on it, I can promise you that your conventional deadlift and your sumo deadlift will probably have gone up. Right? That's the point there. Now, when it comes to a lot of lifting, what people need to remember is that if you get generally strong or brutally strong at squatting, pulling, pressing, notice I didn't specify which types, you're probably going to be an all-around strong guy. And this is one of the reasons that a lot of people can use a lot of these variations, or they can use chains and other things and still be really strong. Does it mean that they won't benefit from some specific technique work to the specific lifts they want to do? No, of course not. Of course they will. But other than with novice lifters, high specificity training doesn't always do that much. In other words, once you have a motor pattern down and you know how to perform a squat correctly, or a bench press, or a standing press, or whatever else, additional specificity technique work only yields very small results. That's why we can take a novice lifter and put them on 5 basic exercises. And if we hammer those 5 basic exercises, they'll make faster gains than they will if we give them variation. And it's because they need a few months to learn the movement patterns. And the more they practice the movement patterns, the stronger they get, and therefore the faster they can overload, therefore the faster they can gain muscle. Whereas if you have them do 37 different exercises, they may not gain as fast. But as we get more advanced, what you find is that once you have movement patterns down, practicing a movement only adds a little bit. In other words, if you were to take a squat variation and a bunch of other exercises and get so good that you could walk over and back squat 550 without having practiced it, you're not going to practice until you get to 650, right? You're not going to put 100 pounds on it by getting really good at the squat. Right, your 550 with really good practice and technique might turn into 570, 580. But it's not going to go up 100 pounds. So when people see a lot of these variations, what you need to understand is that some people say, well, how could chains necessarily help? Why is a person lifting with chains? How does that carry over to the raw lift? Isn't it not always perfect tension at the weakest point in the exercise? That's true. That is true. But if you were to take a sumo deadlift with chains and you were to do tons and tons and tons of it and go from a point to where you sumo pull 400 pounds using 80 pounds of chains over it, and you get to where you can do 550 with 80 pounds of chains on it, I promise you your conventional deadlift's going to get stronger. I promise you it will. It's not possible for it not to, because you got stronger through the same basic movement pattern. All right? And people need to remember strong is still strong. And not that I'm advocating doing this, but if you were to take someone and have them not do the squat, bench, or the deadlift, who's never done the normal powerlifter style squat, or a conventional deadlift or a bench press in their life, and you were to have them train for years and years and years on some other lifts, and they got to where they could clean and push press 400 pounds. I can assure you beyond a reasonable doubt that that person is going to have a very impressive squat, bench, and deadlift the first time you put them under those lifts. And with a little bit of practice, they would probably have a really good squat, bench, and deadlift. Why? Because strength is strength, and that's a nice big movement that involves a lot of similar movement patterns and all the way around. Not that I'm telling you that the clean and push press is the greatest strength builder. It's not. It's good exercise. So when we get over to this idea of carryover, this is one of the things that I'm telling a lot of people out there, is that there is merit to getting generally strong. And I'm not saying a lot of power lifters don't get really, really good by doing minimalist training. But lifters who do other things and have a variety of angles because of the different movement patterns involved tend to be more well-rounded. You tend to be more jacked. Right? We tend to be bigger, more jacked, better strength, lower risks of injury, because you're better at doing other things. Better at doing other things. And this kind of comes over to that silly point, when people will say, well, size separates from strength. Look, the only reason anyone believes that is because of heavy drug use and insulin and site enhancement and everything else in the bodybuilding world. Okay? The only reason a bodybuilder would be weak is because of site enhancement, weak muscle groups, things like that. In other words, if you see a bodybuilder who does seem to be weak on the big basic lifts, it's probably because they have really weak muscle somewhere in their body. In other words, maybe their lower back is really, really weak. Maybe their abs are really, really weak. Maybe they have so much fake muscle inside their arms or delts that they can't move correctly. Okay? Those are the things that interfere. Those are all factors. Because if they really were developed and had developed every muscle in their body to a large extent, including their abdominals and their spinal erectors and their hamstrings and everything else, they would be monstrously strong at any basic lift. And I think the reason I'm bringing this up is that a lot of these topics come up with people will say, well, these lift variations you're doing, do they have carryover? What's your strength at? And my point is that, of course, they have carryover. Is it always going to be a one-to-one carryover? No. But if you are improving all the way around, right there, perfect example, I'm doing football bar standing presses. Will that help with my bench press? Well, is it making my upper chest, my delts, and my triceps grow? Are they getting bigger and stronger? Yeah. Will that probably help my bench press? Of course. Because bigger pecs, delts, and triceps generally improve your bench press. Strength is strength. Does it mean if I did nothing but this lift and did no chest pressing of any type that my bench would go up? Well, maybe not. It might regress. And that's the point we make. Strength is specific. Yeah, strength is specific because there are movement patterns involved. There are joint angles involved. Those things do matter for getting that last bit of strength. But general size and strength itself will matter more. It will carry over more than the practice of the movement patterns does. Because strength is not necessarily technique. What I mean is Olympic lifting is largely technique-based. In other words, you can technique your way into another 150 pounds on a power clean with the same level of strength. You can't technique yourself into a non-technical type lift, which is what like the power lifts are, the squat, bench, and deadlift, right? They're very much strength-oriented lifts where technique matters, but it's not the be-all, end-all. You can brute strength your way into some pretty impressive lifts on those. And then you could fine tune it with technique. But at the end of the day, strength is strength. Strength is strength. And getting generally strong all the way around will still make you pretty good at any lift that you attempt to tackle. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.